Greetings aspirants, welcome to Narayana IAS. This is Karthik Moni, I am here for daily news analysis. For today's session, I have picked up 4 important articles from Hindu as well as the Indian Express. The first article is about the most expected telecom bill. So here I am going to discuss the nuanced details of the bill. So that is going to be the first article. Second article is about the ultra processed food. So the article is about bringing taxation to the processed food. That is the second article. And third article is about the existing problem of shortage of sugar. So currently we are diverting the sugar, that is diverting the molasses to the ethanol generation. So we are facing the problem. That is going to be the third article. The fourth and finally, we are going to discuss the new sub-variant of COVID virus. So that is going to be the final article. Coming to the first article, we are going to discuss the draft provisions of Telecommunication Bill 2023. Exam point of view, we have to know the provisions clearly. We can expect some prelims question in the upcoming examination. So that is the relevance of the examination. So we are discussing this article because Indian economy is already into the digital era, and also the telecommunication as a sector is contributing more to the Indian economy, and technology wise India is moving towards 5G technology. So in this context, we have to know about the regulation provisions in a detailed manner. So that's why we are discussing this article. Coming to the context, recently on December 18, 2023, the Lok Sabha presented the Telecommunication Bill 2023. So the intention of this bill is to control and regulate the entire telecommunication sector. That is the larger objective. And also they wanted us to replace the existing age-old legislations. So 1885 legislation, that is Indian Telegraph Act, and Indian Wireless Telegraphy Act 1933, and then Telegraph Wire Unlawful Possession Act 1950. So look at the years. It is 1885, 1933 and 1950. So it is very old. So it is very much important that for the telecommunication regulation, we need new legislation. We need a comprehensive new regulation to accommodate the modern technology. So that is the context of the article. Coming to the first part of the discussion, we have to know about the need to have such a telecommunication bill. The first aspect, as I already mentioned, the existing legislature is outdated in nature because it was created 100 years before, 70 years before. So we need new legislation because the existing legislation was enacted during when the technology is in the infant stage. Now the technology has evolved to greater extent. We are having mobile phones. We were in a position to regulate the mobile networks, and also internet is also there, digital communication is also there. The complexity involved in the technology is also very high. So that's why we need a new legislation. So second dimension, lack of data protection and privacy provisions. So existing legislation doesn't are giving very low scope for the data protection measures, because as of now the service providers, for example Airtel, Jio, like many other service providers, are managing sensitive personal information of the users. So we need a legislation to ensure the data protection and the privacy aspects of the users. So for this aspect also we need a legislation. And third aspect, spectrum management. We faced a huge problem when it comes to the allocation of 2G spectrum. So in order to manage the spectrum allocation in a proper way, we need a new legislation that is also there. And finally, and most importantly, national security point of view, because India is facing the cyber attacks. India is the country which is experiencing most cyber security attacks globally. Around 13% of the global attacks. Look at the number, 13% globally, the cyber threat or the cyber attack is on India. So security point of view also, and also in order to secure the critical telecom infrastructure also, we need new legislation. So these are the 4 dimensions for the need for new legislations. One is the existing one is outdated in nature. Second one is to protect the data of the users and also protect the privacy concerns of the users. And third aspect is about the spectrum management. And finally, it's about the national security point of view, right? Next, we have to know about the provisions. So first aspect is authorization for telecom related activities. So in order to engage, in order to provide telecom related services, in order to possess the devices, in order to expand the network, we need prior consent from the central government. So this is very important. We can expect some prelims question. Prior authorization from the central government. So is very much important and it is needed to provide the services, to provide the telecommunication services, to establish, to operate, to maintain, and to expand the telecommunication network. So having the network and providing the services, both are different. We have to differentiate between these two. And finally, there is one more provision that possessing the radio equipments. There is a possibility that we can expect this statement in the prelims examination. There is a possibility that we may think that it is wrong, but this is also there. So we have to pay attention on this aspect as well, that possessing, or in order to possess the radio equipments also, we need prior permission from the central government. So this is the first provision. Second aspect, assignment of the spectrum. So spectrum assignment is very important because we faced a huge problem during the 2G spectrum allocation. So corruption cases was there and Supreme Court intervention was there. So huge, the complexity was very huge. So here in this current legislation, so here the spectrum allocation will be assigned through the auction. So except for the specific uses like national security, defense, disaster management, and weather forecasting. So which means they are allowing two different ways to allocate the spectrum. One is administered allocation and second one is auction allocation. So these are the two aspects. For commercial interest, we are going for the auction, whereas for the public interest, that is for the national security point of view, defense point of view, disaster management and weather forecasting, we are using the administration allocation, right? So here administration allocation is nothing but the government used to have a specific set of guidelines. So based on these guidelines, they will allocate the spectrum to the individual service providers. Whereas auction, so auction allocation, they will go for the auction. So competitive bidding will be there. In this aspect, the allocation will be happen, right? So this provision wanted to give more preference to the auction allocation. So for that too, for the commercial purposes. And apart from that, the bill also enhances the center government's role in reassigning any frequency ranges. So if government is in need to make some changes after allocation, that is also possible. So center government is authorized to do that. And apart from that, we have to get the permission from the center government to share the spectrum, to trade the spectrum and also lease and surrender the spectrum. So these are the provisions related to the spectrum allocation. So coming to the spectrum allocation methodologies, I already discussed about administrative allocation and also the auction allocation. So administrative allocation, the process is little simple and quicker because the government is having more say. So creating the guidelines and then allocation. It is little simple and also quicker in nature, whereas auction is little complex because time consuming, because competitive bidding is happening. So time consuming in nature. Apart from that, price determination, in the administered allocation, the price will be determined by the government based on certain criteria. Whereas on the other case, auction, competitive bidding will be there. So it will be based on the market demands. And apart from that, transparency aspect, the transparency is comparatively low. So that is the problem with the administrative allocation. So transparency is comparatively low, but transparency is very high in the an auction based allocation. And also revenue generation, government set the price so that very less possibility of revenue prospects. Whereas in the case of auction, competitive bidding will be there. So revenue generation possibility is very high. So higher revenue generation possibility. Spectrum utilization, here administrative allocation, suboptimal utilization will be there because it is given or allocated by the government itself. That is the problem. Whereas efficiency will be comparatively more. That's why utilization will also be more on the auction based allocation. So example for these two. So administrative allocation, we have allocation to the metro rail services and also community radio services, defense and railway and police services, right? On the other hand, the auction based allocation for mobile telecommunications, for broadband and also for the internet services. So these are the difference between the administrative allocation and also the auction based allocation. So this is the conceptual difference between these two that we have to know for the exam point. And coming to the bill, so power of inception and search. So we already discussed about the areas where they want to get the previous sanction from the government. Then we discussed about the allocation of the spectrum. Now we are going to discuss the power of inception and search. So this bill is giving more power and authority to the center government to intercept and search. So from the aspects of security point of view. So intercepting, monitoring and blocking certain messages is also allowed under specific conditions like public safety and public emergency, and also interest of the state security and preventing the incitements of the offense, etc. And also government can temporarily take control of the telecom infrastructure, networks and services during public emergency for the public safety. So this provision is a little conflicting in nature because there is a possibility that government intervention will be there in the telecommunication services. So recently in the Jammu and Kashmir also we are facing a trouble that the government is using internet ban or internet shutdown to reduce the dissenting voices. So this legislation, this provision is in the legislation can facilitate the government to curb the dissent against government. So that is possible. And next important aspect is protection of users. So protection of users is very much important. So this provision is very important and very significant because the central government may provide measures to protect the users, especially getting prior consent to receive specified messages, example advertising messages, and also the creation of do not disturb registers, and also mechanism to allow users to report the malware and or specified messages. Because as of now, we don't have an existing legislation mechanism to prevent or protect the interest of the users. Because of that, the users are flooded with the advertisement mechanism by the service providers. So next important provision is appointment of the important functionaries of TRAI. So for the post of chairman, at least 30 years of professional experience is important, and for the members of the regulatory institution, so we need around 25 years of professional experience in the telecom services to become a member of the regulatory body TRAI, right? So that is there. Apart from that, renamed the existing fund. So already we have a fund called Universal Service Obligation Fund. This is important from the prelims point of view. So objective of this fund is to serve the unserved areas. So by using this fund, the government will increases the area of telecommunication services to the unserved regions. Now this fund is renamed as Digital Bharat Nidhi. So exam point of view, prelims examination, it is very important. And now coming to the benefits of the bill. So first aspect, clarity in the spectrum allocation. So previously, the existing outdated legislation doesn't have the clarity of how the spectrum should be allocated. That is not there. Now it is very clear. So for the public purpose, it should be administered allocation, whereas for the commercial purpose, it should be through auction. So clarity in spectrum allocation is there. Second important significant provision is ensuring the stringent user verification, because there is a possibility of misusing the SIM cards. So there is a possibility is there. So making stringent provisions for getting the SIM cards by having the user verification in a stringent manner, we can able to prevent the misuse of telecom services. So this is the second important significance. So third important aspect is single authorization process. So in this aspect, it will simplify the licensing process by consolidating the various licenses and also registrations, and also it bring all those licenses and registration protocols into one single head, and because of this aspect, it will reduce the bureaucratic hurdle. Coming to the next article, we have an article related to the HFSS food, high fat, sugar, salt based foods. So these are nothing but ultra processed food. So here the article is about taxing. So we want to bring taxation to those products because it is very important from the health perspective. So exam point of view, it is very important. We can expect some questions related to the health issues related to such food products. So that we can expect. In the previous year, there was a question in 2011 related to the trans fats. So trans fats is nothing but one of the important component of such processed foods. So here the question is about the basic conceptual details about the trans fats. So we can also expect some similar questions in the preliminary upcoming examination. So that's why we are discussing this article. Coming to the context, the article mentioned about few facts. According to the World Bank report of 2019, worldwide, 70% of all overweight and obese people live in low and middle income countries, with 55% rise in rural areas across the globe. So there is a presumption that the obesity and overweight is a problem in the high income countries or in urban areas or only in the affluent societies. So this is the preconception which we have, but actual data of the World Bank is something different, which means the high burden of overweight and obese is more in low and middle income countries. So which means India is also in the trouble. So that we have to understand. And second aspects, globally, and that too in India, around 1.2 million people are dying because of such diet related problems. So the number is very high that we have to highlight. And apart from that, it is found that the consumption of such high fat, sugar and salt based food products are one of the major reasons for such mortalities. So the context, from this context, we have to know about the health related impacts. That is one dimension. Second dimension, we have to know about how the taxation will help us to reduce the consumption, second dimension. And also we have to know about what are the few other things which we have to do in order to reduce the consumption of such ultra processed foods. So that is very important. First, we have to know about the health issues of ultra processed foods. The first one is addiction, second one is obesity, then hypertension, then cardiovascular disease and diabetes. So look at the order of arrangement of the health issues. Yes, first addiction, right? So addiction is the first stage of or first point of the health related issues, right? So here the having such food will trigger the reward centers of the brain and leads to a pattern of overeating or addicting to such eating behaviors. So addiction is the first problem that led to the consequent health issues, right? So here, because of the addiction, the overeating of such junk food will be there, and because of overeating, there will be a problem of high intake of high calorie and low nutrition food, and because of that, there will be increase in weight gain that leads to obesity, right? Third, there will be a problem of increased problem of hypertension because salt intake is very high, and because of that the blood pressure will increase, and because of the increase in blood pressure, hypertension will occur. So next important problem is increased occurrences of cardiovascular disease and diabetes. So here the increased possibility of cardiovascular disease, that is heart attack, is possible because of increase in the cholesterol levels. So here especially this increase in the cholesterol level is because of increased intake of saturated fats and trans fats. So these fats will lead to the increase in the bad cholesterol level. There are two different types, good cholesterol, bad cholesterol is there. So because of increased intake of such processed food will lead to the increased in the bad cholesterol, that is saturated fats and trans fats. So it leads to the heart problem because it will obstruct the heart arteries, and also because of the increased hypertension the heart problem will occur, and also there is an increased possibility of occurrences of stroke is also there. And finally diabetes, because there is a possibility of increased intake of sugar. So because of this reason the diabetes is also possible. And apart from diabetes, increased sugar intake will lead to the dental problems. So apart from that, there is the increased correlation of occurrences of cancer because of increased intake or increased consumption of such ultra processed foods. So next we have to know about the impact of such food products to the economy. So here we have to highlight the increase in number of non-communicable diseases. Yes, cardiovascular disease is increasing, and also diabetes is increasing, and stroke is increasing, and also number of cancer patients is also increasing. So these are some of the major increase in the non-communicable diseases in India. So look at the number. Between 1990 to 2019, the non-communicable disease, the burden of non-communicable disease had increased from 38% to 68%. So drastic increase. There is a doubling of increase in the burden of non-communicable disease. So it is problematic in nature, and because of increase in non-communicable diseases, the government were in a position to increase its spending on health. This led to the increase in expenditure. So because of this, we are losing around 23 billion in 2017, and if the trend goes like this, we will be in a position to spend 480 billion by 2060. So economic cost of increased consumption of ultra processed food is very high. So that's why we were in a position to take a stringent measure. So next we have to think about the taxation of such products, because taxation is very important. It will have an impact on reducing the consumption of such food products. So domestic practices is also there. In 2016, Kerala came up with the fat tax, and later it was subsumed into the GST later. That is the case, but already we tried with such a taxation, punitive taxation we tried, and apart from that, globally there are some measures, right? So in South Africa, health promotion levy was there. So from the report itself, it is evident that the levy on such ultra processed food is having a efficacy, because there is a large reduction in the purchase of taxable beverages among lower socio-economic status households. Yes, taxation is acting efficiently. So in the global arena, there are some examples that it reduced the consumption of bringing punitive taxation. So here also in India also we have to come up with some innovative taxation mechanism so that the consumption of such products will get reduced. So here we have to know about the nature of taxation, because so the taxation has to be viewed from the aspect, it should be regressive in nature. It has to reduce the consumption, and also it should not aspire to raise the revenue by bringing one more tax. So efficacy should be seen from the perspective of reducing the consumption, not from the aspects of raising the revenue. So this should be the main criteria when introducing the taxation to such products, right? Apart from that, it should be reformative in nature. So it has to be incentivized, it has to incentivize the producers to switch over to the the healthy alternatives, and also it has to incentivize, or it has to be regressive in nature, or it has to push the consumers towards the healthy alternatives. So it should be reformative in nature, and also most importantly, we should have a differentiated taxation mechanism based on the nutritional quality. For example, as of now, for all the salted products, salted snacks, so we have 12% GST taxation. Irrespective of the amount of salt content, we are having 12%. This should not be the case. So here, based on the salt content, the penalty tax should be there. So in this aspect, if we are applying the taxation, it will reduce the consumption of such processed foods. So next we have an editorial article from the Hindu newspaper, that is India's ethanol conundrum. So exam point of view, it is very important. We have to know about the existing sugar shortage problem. So this has to be seen from the perspective of trade-off between the food security and the fuel needs. So we can expect some question related to this trade-off, that is possible, the first dimension. And also we have to know about the government policy on ethanol production. So we can expect both prelims as well as mains question in the upcoming examination from the government policy on ethanol production, that is possible. So that's why we are discussing this article. Coming to the context, recently the Ministry of Consumer Affairs, Food and Public Distribution came up with a direction to the sugar mills and distilleries. So they gave a directions that not to use sugarcane juice or syrup to produce the ethanol, because we are facing the problem of sugar shortage. So as a measure, in order to overcome this sugar shortage, they gave a direction to reduce the diversion of molasses for the ethanol production. So from this context, we have to know about the technical details behind the sugar production, and also we have to know the current problem or reason for the shortage, and also what are the problems in government policy in ethanol production that we have to know. And also we have to know about the consequent problem because of the uncertainty in the government policies, that also we have to know. So first we have to know about what is meant by A heavy molasses, B heavy molasses and C heavy molasses. So in the sugar production, so the sugarcane juice will be heated to reduce the water content. So by heating, the water vapor will get evaporated, and because of that we used to have a thick sugar syrup is what we call it as molasses, right? Here we are having three types of molasses. So A heavy, B heavy and C heavy, right? So A heavy is nothing but these three types are nothing but three different molasses after different stages of crystallization. So first, if we are heating the molasses, the first set of crystallization will happen. The sugar will get precipitated because of increased heating. So the left out viscous liquid is what we call it as A heavy molasses. So here the sugar content is still there in the molasses. So comparatively, when compared to other two molasses, the sugar content is very high in the A heavy molasses. So after that, they'll heat further, and because of the heating, some more sugar will get precipitated, and the left out molasses is what we call it as B heavy molasses. Finally, the B heavy molasses is heated further, and some more crystallization will happen and precipitation will happen, and finally the left out thick viscous liquid is what we call it as C heavy. So here in the C heavy molasses, the sugar content is comparatively very low because most of the sugar is getting precipitated already. So when compared to A molasses, the sugar content in the C molasses is comparatively low. So this is the technical detail we have to know. As of now, we are diverting this B molasses for the ethanol production. So this is the technical detail, right? Now we have to know about the reason for the sugar shortage. So there are two different problems. One is because of the production. So another one is because of the policy. So problem in the production and also problem in the government policy is the reason for the sugar shortage. So coming to the first aspect, the lower production. So this year the production is comparatively low, especially the production from the Maharashtra and Karnataka, the sugarcane production is comparatively low. So because of the reduction in the production is also one of the reason for the sugar shortage. And second important problem is policy, right? Ethanol blending, the problem in ethanol blending policy program in India. Yes, in 2003, India, the government, the central government came up with a policy called ethanol blending program. So in this, so the government aspired to increase the ethanol blending to the normal fuel to 20%. So for the fuel needs, that is in order to reduce the import of fossil fuels and also in order to reduce the greenhouse gas emission from the fossil fuels, they came up with this program. So for that, ethanol generation is very much important, right? So here, currently the ethanol is supplied mainly from B-heavy molasses, broken rice and maize. See, it is majorly from the B-heavy molasses. So we are diverting the molasses for the ethanol production. And most importantly, the larger point of view, we have to think from the perspective that we are using food produce for the ethanol generation. So this is a problematic stand, right? So here India's ethanol blended petrol increased from 1.6 percentage in 2013-14 to 11 percentage, right? So the ethanol blending increased comparatively. So between 2013 to 2023, the increase in ethanol blending is increased, which means ethanol production is increasing, right? So which means diversion of molasses to the ethanol is also consequently increased. So this is the inference which we have to know. And apart from that, the pricing policies and the sugar stock. So government is using the differential pricing mechanism. So it is incentivizing the sugar mills for the ethanol production. So giving more incentives to the ethanol production when compared to the sugar production. This differential pricing policy is also incentivizing the sugar mills and distilleries to produce or to divert the molasses for the ethanol production. So because of these two reasons, one because of the low production, that is temporary reason, that too for this year, and second because of the pertinent problem, that is government policy. So that we have to. Now we came to know that the government, there is a problem in the government policy, and also we have to know about how this problematic government policy will impact the sugar mills and the farmers. So as an initial policy support, the government encouraged the sugar mills to increase the investment in distilleries for the production of ethanol. Because ethanol production is very important, the government itself aspiring to increase the ethanol blending from 5% to 20%. So 5% to 20%, there is an increase in aspiration. So in order to increase the ethanol production, they actively supported the sugar mills for increasing the investment on distilleries. So recently, after the shortage of sugar problem cropped up, the ministry came up with the direction that sugar mills should not produce ethanol directly from the concentrated cane juice or from cane syrup. So this direction received a huge oppression from the sugar mills, and as a consequence, they changed the order, they modified the order. Then they allowed for ethanol production using both cane sugar and B-heavy molasses. So which means it's showing the high uncertainty in the government policy on ethanol production. So which means it will affect the trust of the investors, it will affect the trust of the industries. So in this aspect, it will affect the ethanol generation. So production of ethanol will get affected because of such uncertainty in the government policy that we have to highlight. So now, as an alternate plan, the government came up with a new direction, that the government wanted to shift from molasses to grains for the ethanol production. So as the sugarcane stocks are falling rapidly, the government is transitioning to the grain-based ethanol production, particularly from the maize. And also, the government authorized the cooperatives such as NAFED and NCGF to procure the maize for the ethanol production. So, in order to sustain or in order to achieve the ethanol blending program target. So, as an alternative, the government wanted to transition from the existing sugar-based ethanol production to maize-based ethanol production. But this is also problematic because maize is also a one another important food grain. So, coming to the challenges, so this food fuel conflict will be there. So, using corn for ethanol production will also have an impact on food price, because previously in United States between 2006 to 2014 there is an increase in the corn based ethanol production that led to the increase in the corn price in United States. So this we have to take into account, and also we have to know about the comparison between the sugar based ethanol production and also the corn based ethanol production. When compared to the corn-based ethanol production, the food price impact because of the sugarcane-based ethanol production is comparatively low. This is perceptible from the example of Brazil. So that we have to consider before thinking about the alternatives. Right? As a consequence, the food inflation will be a possible outcome. Right? So it is estimated that for this transition from the sugarcane based ethanol production to corn based ethanol production, we need 16.5 million tons of grains annually. That leads to the shortage and it leads to the increase in the price of the corn. So this is the possible consequence because of this alternative plan. So as a way forward, the government have to work on the pricing policy on one hand, right? So differentiating the sugar and also ethanol production should not be the case. So they have to work on the pricing mechanism, and also the government wanted to work on the increase in the production rather than directing the sugar mills to reduce the ethanol production. So that is the second aspect. And finally, and most importantly, as a long-term measure, government have to work on the ethanol generation from the biomasses, that is non-food based produce rather than depending on the sugar or corn. So we have to work on the technology aspect. So government have to work on the research and development on producing ethanol from the non-food based biomass produce. Next, we have an article related to the COVID-19 virus. So exam point of view, we can expect question related to the variant of COVID-19 that is possible. And also we have to know about the conceptual difference between variant of interest and variant of concern. So previously there was a question in 2020 regarding the role of World Health Organization in providing the global health security, that too during the COVID-19 pandemic. So in this topic also, involvement of World Health Organization is there. So that's why we are discussing this article. So coming to the context, recently there is a increase in number of the COVID-19 subvariant, that is JN1 cases. So the World Health Organization officially categorized this subvariant as variant of interest. So this is the context of this article. From this context, we have to know about what is meant by JN1 variant. It is a sublineage of Pirola. So exam point of view, this name is important. Pirola is important. So Pirola is a variant of SARS-CoV-2 virus. So Pirola is the variant of SARS-CoV-2 virus, and JN1 is a subvariant of this Pirola virus. So exam point of view, we have to know about the formation mechanism of the variant. So here the formation is based because of the process of mutation. The viruses is having the natural tendency to replicate themselves to make copies, and while creating such copies, the occurrences of some errors in the genetic modification, the genetic setup, will lead to the formation of variants. So the error in the genetic makeup will lead to the change in the virus structure and also the behavior, and it used to have a potentially different characteristics altogether. So here the problem is that there is a possibility that it can create severe infection similar to the original one. That is possible. And also there is a possibility that the transmission mechanism will be different. And also there is a possibility that it can escape from the existing vaccine mechanism. So this is the problem. So transmission, escape from the vaccines, and also severity similar to the existing variant. So that is possible. So now we have to know about the variant categorization. So based on the impact on public health, we are categorizing the variant into two. One is variant of interest and variant of concern. So variant of interest shows potential changes in the characteristics of transmissibility and vaccine escape. So when compared to the original virus, so it used to show the difference in transmissibility and also the escape from the vaccine. So that should be the primary criteria. And apart from that, the possibility of regional limited spread will be there. Once any variant is categorized as variant of interest, then the World Health Organization will monitor the potential escalation. So this is about the variant of interest. When it comes to the variant of concern, it exhibits the increased transmissibility and disease severity. So disease severity is very important. Even though it can escape from the vaccines, even though the transmission is more, if it is severe, if it is creating more problem to the human, then it is a concern. So disease severity is one important criteria to classify any variant as variant of concern, right? And apart from that, the need for hospitalization will also be high, and also the effectiveness of the treatment will also comparatively low, and this leads to the possibility of significant global public health risk. So if any variant is having such criteria, then such variant can be categorized as variant of concern. Severe ability and also higher need of hospitalization, reducing the efficacy of the treatment, and also poses the global health risk threat, then such variant will be categorized as variable of concern. Now let's try some of the prelims practice questions. So first question, all natural fats and oils are combination of mono unsaturated, polyunsaturated or saturated fatty acids or trans fatty acids. So includes all the combinations, yes, saturated and unsaturated, and also the trans fatty acids as well. So first statement is correct. Second statement, mono unsaturated, polyunsaturated fatty acids are categorized as healthy fats. Yes, there are two categories. One is saturated. Saturated is bad for health, whereas unsaturated fatty acid is good for health. So monosaturated and polysaturated fatty acids are categorized as healthy fats, contribute to energy and vitamin absorption and cardiovascular health. Yes, second statement is correct. So both the statements are correct. So option is C. So which of the above statement is are correct? C is the correct option. Yes, answer C is right. Coming to the second question, TROI, a nodal body to regulate telecom services in India, is a non-statutory body. No, it is a statutory body. We have a separate statute for this regulatory body. So first statement is wrong. The Telecommunication Bill 2023 proposes only. So whenever we are getting the extreme statements like nothing, only, always, so we have to pay attention. So here this is wrong because we have both auction allocation as well as administered allocation. So second statement is also wrong. Third statement, Digital Bharat Nidhi Fund have been established to provide telecom services in underserved areas. Yes, it is correct. Bharat Net project in India is the world's largest rural broadband connectivity program using optical fiber. Yes, this is also right. So option 3 and 4 is right. Option C is right. Yes, answer C is correct. So coming to the third question, consider the following statements regarding COVID-19. It is caused by SARS-CoV-2 virus. Yes, it is right. And primarily affects the respiratory system. This is also right. First statement is correct. The people infected with COVID-19 cannot spread. No, this is wrong. Transmission will be there. People to people transmission will be there. So second statement is wrong. So antibodies from the past COVID-19 infection or vaccination can provide protection against virus. Yes, this is right. So statement 1 and 3 is right. So option A will be right. Yes, answer A is right. Coming to the fourth question, India's shift to B-heavy molasses for ethanol aims to address sugar shortage. No, because this diversion itself create a problem. So first statement is not correct. Food security, no, because this is the reason why we are facing the sugar shortage. So second statement, that is B option, is also wrong. So fuel dependence, to an extent this is correct, but it risk lower cane farmer income. Yes, it is reasonable. It can be a possible option, but we have to see the option D as well. So it addresses the renewable energy goal. Yes, it is true, and also it risks food inflation. So option D is correct. So it is the right option, and also it is more nearer to the question asked. So that's why we are going with the option D. So answer D is correct. So coming to the last prelims question, consider the following statements. The balance of payment of any economy has to be always zero. So this is a very important question, because theoretically the balance of payment, the balance sheet should be zero. So this statement is correct, but practically there will be a difference. We are having two different account, current account and capital account. We are having two different account. The balance will not be there, difference will be there, deficit will be there. So practically difference will be there, but in theoretical aspect it has to be zero. So first statement is correct. So for your conceptual understanding, we included this statement. Second statement, according to IMF, recently the Indian economy is not resilient enough to the external shocks. No, this statement is wrong. Indian economy is resilient. So second statement is wrong. First statement is correct. Option A is right. Yes, A is right answer. Coming to the mains question, discuss the various provisions of the new Telecom Bill 2023 and analyze the concerns associated with the bill, right? So it is a two-part question. So first we have to list the provisions, and then we have to discuss the concerns, and also we have to analyze the concerns as well, right? So in the introduction, we can mention the aim to revamp the existing legislation. So existing legislation is outdated in nature. That's why we are revamping. Apart from that, we have to mention or highlight the significance of the bill, so that we can add it in the introduction part. So in the provisions, we have to mention the licensing and regulation provisions, and also we have to mention about the spectrum management. We are using auction as well as administration mechanism. In this aspect, in this both the aspects, we are using the spectrum allocation, and also we have to mention about the protection of users, that is consumer rights, and also we have to mention about the facilitation mechanism by the government to promote innovation and competition, and finally concerns we have to mention. So when it comes to the concerns, like we are having the concerns related to the data privacy and surveillance, because the intrusion from the government agencies are possible. So the government agencies are allowed to intervene into the messages, intercept the messages, monitor the messages. That is possible. So privacy concerns and surveillance concerns are there, and neutrality aspect also there is a problem. So this current legislation increased the definition, expanded the scope of definition of the telecom services. So all the social messaging apps will come into the picture. So differentiation between the apps, applications and the service provider will not be there. So neutrality is getting affected. That is another aspect. And finally, implementation challenge also we have to mention. Right? When it comes to the analysis point of view, we can also mention about the government's challenge in balancing between the aspirations of security on one side, aspirations of user on one side, and also the aspirations of telecom sector on the other side. This balance, managing this delicate balance is a challenging aspect that we have to highlight. And also we have to do the global comparison about the regulations, and also we have to bring the perspective of whether the current legislation is future ready or not. So that is very important, because technology is advanced day by day, and whenever we are creating a legislation, we have to think from the perspective that it should have the vision to think or include the future advancements in the technology. So that is very much important. So these are the things which we have to include in the body part of the answer. And finally, in the conclusion, we can give the main arguments. We can take a stand that, okay, even though the concerns are there, even though the bill is having limitations, we can project or highlight the significant aspects, then we can summarize. So that's the end of the discussion. Thanks for watching. So do like, share and comment the video, and don't forget to subscribe our channel. Thank you.